Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, raising children in the digital age, but first, winter is on its way. Let's talk about energy costs. Back after these words.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, let's talk a little bit about energy costs. As I indicated, winter is on its way, and let's find out if we're going to pay more or less. What are energy supplies like? Joining me to talk about this is Terry Fitzpatrick. He's the president and CEO of the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, real expert on Pennsylvania energy. All right, well, before we can talk about the cost, we have to, it's the law of supply and demand. Do I got that about right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we have to find out what the supplies are going to be like and whether people are going to be pay more or less. Let's start out with the national scene.
Sure.
And then, because obviously it's going to affect Pennsylvania, and then hone in on Pennsylvania itself. So go ahead.
Supplies are certainly adequate for what we're going to face this winter, in the country and in Pennsylvania. And, I have to say, part of the reason the country is in good shape is because of what Pennsylvania does. We're the second largest natural gas producer. We're the largest exporter of energy of any state in the country. So Pennsylvania is a big contributor to that. So, yes, the supplies are adequate. Now, internationally, the situation is tighter because of the situation in Ukraine, also because economies picked up coming out of the pandemic. So that more energy usage, supplies a little bit tighter. That doesn't mean we're not going to have enough energy. We will, but the price is up because of that. The
right.
Supply-demand balance is different than it was.
Yeah, one of the big issues that has arisen is the energy shortage in Europe and the role that America ought to play. Not just supplying energy for its own use, but supplying energy overseas.
Yes, natural gas can be turned into a liquid and then sent on ships to places where it's needed, liquefied natural gas. We are sending a fair amount of that over. There is a debate in terms of our public policy. Should we be encouraging more LNG, as they're called, terminals, so that we can ship more of the gas overseas?
Yeah, well, let's focus on Pennsylvania a bit. Obviously, back in the day, we were a major part of the Industrial Revolution, coal, iron, steel, literally up in the Northeast, out in the Southwest. We were a major component in the great Industrial Revolution. Now, you don't hear so much about coal and iron and steel. It's all about natural gas, and particularly the deep well drilling. I think I got that right.
Right.
Called fracking. So what's the situation in Pennsylvania in terms of its energy?
Well, again, we're the largest energy exporter. We're the second largest natural gas supplier. I think we're about the fourth largest generator of electricity. A lot of that's related to gas, too, because natural gas is now the largest fuel that's used to generate electricity. But Terry, you're right about Pennsylvania's legacy. And in fact, I was reflecting when you said that. I'm here in part because of that. My Irish roots, coal mining, anthracite mining, the Northeast. I'm here because of that industrial revolution, the history of Pennsylvania.
Anthracite coal, hard coal, as compared to bituminous coal out in the Southwest. I have to point that out, but go ahead.
Correct. No, that's absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, the fact of the matter is that with natural gas, it's not quite as controversial as other forms. I'm not saying there aren't folks who oppose it. And Governor Wolf, for example, who's not arguably a progressive Democrat, and I'm using that illustrative, not descriptively, let me put it this way. He is a supporter of natural gas. Now, he does say, let's tax it, and he has another problem with the pipelines and concern about the damage, that you could get from environmental damage from the leakage that could occur. And so, now, I'm not saying all progressives support natural gas, because that's not true, but you do have some progressives who are in favor of natural gas production.
Certainly in Pennsylvania, Terry, I think the consensus is that you need to support hydraulic fracturing. And you and I were talking about the debate, the senatorial debate the other night, and the fact that fracking was a big thing that was discussed there. Now, if you go to other states, it's not the same situation. Some cities in California are seeking to ban the use of natural gas at a date in the future. So any kind of fossil fuels in some places is controversial. In Pennsylvania, that isn't so much the case. The mainstream view is we need to support energy production.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, I want to ask you about the positions of the gubernatorial candidates on energy. Obviously, the governor of the state of Pennsylvania has a lot to say, given his role as governor and his interaction with the legislature. We'll get to that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
All right, I'm chatting with Terry Fitzpatrick. He's the president and CEO of the Energy Association of PA. Terry, before we get to the gubernatorial election and energy, let's talk about specifically prices in Pennsylvania. Obviously, our viewers care a lot about that since it's going to affect their pocketbooks.
Yeah, absolutely. With the winter coming, people are worried about what our heating costs are going to be. And the fact is they're going to be up this year compared to where they were last year. That's just the general trend in energy prices with inflation and, some of the scarcity, not scarcity, but the increased demand, tighter supplies that we talked about earlier. Nationwide, I think the projection is that natural gas bills could be up about 28%, electricity bills 10% that's versus last year.
That's not minuscule. That's pretty steep.
That's pretty steep, and that's tough. Now, if the weather, part of that is they're forecasting a colder winter, but you know how those weather forecasts are. It could turn out different than that. But, what I would say to people with regard to that is, if you're having any kind of difficulty paying your bill, or even if you just want to lower your bill, maybe lower your usage, contact your utility because they can give you some tips on conserving energy. There's some subsidies for things like smart thermostats or more efficient appliances so you can reduce your bill that way. Budget billing to stretch out your payments over the entire year so it doesn't go up and down as much in the winter, and assistance programs for people who qualify. So don't ignore the problem. Be active, contact your utility, see what kind of help you can get.
All right, good points. All right, let's talk about the gubernatorial candidates, Senator Mastriano and the Attorney General Josh Shapiro, the respective party nominees for governor. What are their positions on energy?
Yes, well, Attorney General Shapiro came out with a press release over the summer, and I think I would summarize it. He said, I'm an all-of-the-above energy guy. So once again, we're talking about natural gas, hydraulic fracturing. He supports that. He does want to pass a law that would increase the requirement for how much renewable energy is part of our electricity mix. That's currently at 8%. That's under a law that was passed back in 2004. He would be looking to increase that to 30% by 2030. That's in a bill that's already pending in the legislature, but he's getting himself behind that.
Explain what's renewable energy.
Renewable, there's a number of different types of renewable energy. I think the two main ones are solar and wind.
Solar and wind.
Yes. And we there's a lot of focus on those things nationwide. In fact, there's a lot of subsidies now in the law, the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed by Congress to try to subsidize those things. He would like to take that even further by requiring 30% of our power, of our energy to come from that by 2030.
By 2030.
Yes,
all right. How about Senator Mastriano?
Senator Mastriano is focused more on increasing our production of fossil fuels. That's what he wants. He wants to kind of unleash that to some extent. Ease some regulatory burdens on regulating fracking. He'd like to open public lands to hydraulic fracturing. And then a big issue politically right now, it's kind of going under the radar because the courts have put it on hold, but that's the governor's plan to join the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. That's a cap and trade program for carbon dioxide emissions from power plants. That's a big controversial issue here between Republicans and the governor and the Capitol. Yeah. Senator Mastriano has made clear he would look to withdraw us from RGGI, as it's called.
Right.
Attorney General Shapiro hasn't made his position clear on that. He sounds a little bit skeptical of the plan, but the courts could say it's illegal and make that whole debate moot, but we just don't know what the timing of that will be.
Look, I want to thank you for coming in for this important update as winter approaches. All right, coming back, raising children in a digital age. We all know about this right here and other ways that the digital age plays a role. We'll get into that soon.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
All right, we have an incredibly important subject, raising children in the digital age. Joining me to talk about is Justin Donofrio. He is with the Prevention Services, he's Prevention Services Manager, I should say, with the PA Family Support Alliance. I tell you, when you start talking about the digital era, and I'm going to hold this up, but it's much more than this. My grandkids at 10 and 8, two of them, know more about the digital era than I do. And yes, sometimes, you know, it's of great concern. Talk about some of the problems that exist before we get into this, a possible solution.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think to your point about your grandson, today's children are exposed and have access to digital technology more so than any generation before them. And today's generation of parents is actually the first to be raising their children simultaneously in the physical and digital worlds. They operate seamlessly between the two. And so this is really the first generation of parents who are trying to figure out as they go, how do you address some of the problems and complexities that come along with that? To your point, I could tell you, I'm a father, a parent of a 2-year-old, and it is overwhelmingly difficult to figure out how you manage the access to technology and to the digital devices, not just in your home, but everywhere they go, daycare, other people's homes, friends, family.
Yeah.
It's really, really a plethora of issues that can come about because it's really new territory for parents.
Yeah, that's
today.
a good point. I have to correct something. I have a grandson and a granddaughter. I need to make sure. I have 2 others, but they get to the point. All right, before we talk about the Family Digital Wellness Hub, which people could access to help them, let's go through some of these statistics. I mean, they are absolutely amazing. 69% of U.S. children have their own smartphone by age 12.
Yeah, that's correct. And we've seen that number coming down over the years. It's younger and younger. And one of the other statistics that we see is that the majority of parents, about 70%, say that they believe that a smartphone for a child can actually cause more harm than good. So it's an ironic parallel where we're seeing the age in which children are receiving their first smartphone becoming younger and younger, despite the concerns that parents are bringing up around that.
And another statistic you pointed about this, 70% of kids encounter sexual or violent content online while doing homework research, and then 1 in 5 youth ages 10 to 17 received a sexual solicitation or were approached online. I mean, when you think about it's it's dangerous. Let me just put it that. It's absolutely dangerous to these children.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, because one of the stances that we want to make clear is, we don't believe, and many others don't believe, technology itself is inherently good or bad. It's really how other people use it and whether or not you're aware of that. So part of what we're trying to accomplish and achieve with our Family Digital Wellness Initiative is helping parents, caregivers, families really understand how other people utilize technology to potentially exploit the most vulnerable, which are, in most cases, our children.
Yeah. A majority of parents think that smartphones could bring more harm than good, but in this digital age, is it impossible, to do away with it or not to use it for the children?
Yeah, if you look back just a few years ago, I think a lot of the conversation around digital safety was limiting when they get a smartphone, limiting access to devices such as a smartphone. We're really at a point now where they have access at school and everywhere they go so frequently that it's more focused on how do you have safe and healthy interactions with those devices and technologies, as opposed to when exactly you get access to it, because they have access all the time now.
All right, we're going to run to a break. You have the Pennsylvania Family Support Alliance. You have a program that can provide a good bit of help and assistance in dealing with this problem. Back after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine.
All right, we're talking about technology in a digital age for kids, young people. Let's talk about a solution. You have something called the Family Digital Wellness Hub. What is that?
Yeah, so the Family Digital Wellness Hub is really a one-stop shop online on PFSA's website where families, parents, caregivers can go to meet their needs wherever they may be. So we have a wealth of information on the website just to help parents and families get a basic understanding of digital wellness and digital safety. We also have up-to-date news stories and media stories that help parents to understand what the different trends are that may be happening locally and around the nation. And we also have practical tools that parents can use. So an example of that is our parent toolkit that anybody could go to the website and download completely free. It's a 40-plus page document, very comprehensive, that provides a lot of foundational information as well as activities and examples for parents to utilize to implement and use with their children and their family members so that they can begin the process of moving away from potential digital risks and becoming more acclimated with ways to protect their children and have safe and healthy interactions with digital technologies.
So the bigger point here is that it gives you a fully prepared source plan, a deliberate plan, if you will.
Sure. So one of the things that is included in the toolkit is a digital safety plan. So that plan can be completed by family members, by the adults and the children, and really provides a blueprint for where families can go if they are exposed to a digital risk. But in addition to that, and I think this is your point that you were making, it provides much more than just how do you safeguard against digital risks. It helps parents understand the conversations that they could have and gives them some tips that they could utilize to create safer and healthier interactions.
In other words, resources that the parents can utilize to prevent misusage.
Absolutely. And we also provide resources of other entities where they do research or they provide statistics that are up to date so that parents and caregivers really have all the information they need in terms of figuring out where to go depending on what their needs may be.
And if there is a problem, they obviously have to report it. To whom does that, do they report it to, you have information about how that takes place as well, correct?
We do, and that's a great point. So there are two ways to report any kind of child abuse, whether it's physical, in person, or online. The first is in Pennsylvania, you could call Childline, or you could access Childline online on their website. But for online exploitation, there's also a national cyber tip line that is hosted through the National Center for Exploited and Missing Children. That information is all on our Family Digital Wellness Hub as well, but there are two ways to report any kind of abuse, and that's some of the most useful information any parent or caregiver could have.
And another advantage is things change, and so you're constantly updating this website in order to provide parents with new information, accurate information about how to handle this problem.
Absolutely. You're hitting the nail on the head. This is, as we know, technology changes very rapidly. This landscape shifts frequently. And so we have become very intentional about not only providing updated news and media stories, but updated resources, different types of resources and supports for parents, depending on what those needs may be, and continuously updating that along as we go based on what the overall needs of parents and families are as we move forward through this digital era.
Yeah. Now, I have to ask this question. Yeah. Is there a charge for the hub? I have to ask that question.
That's a great question.
I have to ask that.
It is all completely free. If you go to our website and you click on Family Digital Wellness, you will enter the hub, and everything on that website, including our parent toolkit, is completely free. And that will remain the case for all of our resources.
Yeah, before I let you go, I'm telling you, I am shocked at the amount of time that young people are spending on a whole variety of digits.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, young people are spending a ton of time online, whether it be devices or some other platform, but so are adults. We're all really consumed by our digital devices and these platforms. So it's really figuring out how do we as adults role model those positive interactions.
And it gets overwhelming. That's the other aspect. It's just not the usage. It's overwhelming.
Absolutely. So I know I could tell you it's overwhelming sometimes just when you think about being connected to your work email and your personal email and your different social medias. Think about as a child, whether you're a teenager or even younger, how overwhelming that constant connection can be.
And the problem is getting any better. In fact, it's getting worse almost day by day.
Yeah, that's a little bit of the duality of it all, right? So we, as a society, we're really leveraging technology for all of its benefits, but we're also exposing and increasing the access to that for our young children more and more each day. So it's figuring out how do we strike that right balance and what are the ways that we can do that in a healthy and productive manner.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. This is very important. All right, I want to say next week's show, we're going to devote it entirely to the upcoming November 8th election. We'll get several of the state reporters on the program. And as we always say, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and stay well.